This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Jed's Barbershop. With 3 locations now, you have no reason to not always look your best. Go get a haircut, a beard trim, or even a straight razor shave. Jed's Barbershop is open 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday 9 to 7, and Sunday 12 to 5. They have a location downtown at 212 South, 700 East, and in Sugar House at 2153 East, 2100 South. They just opened up a 3rd location at 167 East, 900 South, right next to Randy's Records. No appointment is necessary. Head on over to jedsbarbershop.com for more information.
Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people, making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
All right, welcome to episode 265 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris Hollifield.
And I'm Chrissy Shelley.
On today's show, we sit down and chat with Kestrel Liedtke, owner of the Tin Angel Cafe. Her and her husband are the owners. She shares her story on this episode. Her husband, Jerry, was actually supposed to join us on this recording, but he ended up having to work.
What is that about?
Hopefully, I really want to bring Jerry on an episode of the podcast, because when we reached out to you guys on Facebook, it sounds like he actually has some really interesting stories here in Salt Lake of things he's done in the city, places he's worked at. And so hopefully we can bring him on a future episode. But Kestrel, she's like, well, should I still come and do the episode? Should I still come and do the recording?
And I'm glad she did.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was
I was
really
like,
fun.
Yeah, you need to come on.
She told us we need to get Jerry on because he's a firecracker, which sounds really fun.
So this past week, I was actually a guest on an episode of a podcast called Podcast Local. I think we talked about this a few episodes ago, how I was went on this podcast, kind of shared the story of I Am Salt Lake, kind of got back a little bit and found out...
Dug into your roots.
Dug into the roots, kind of found out how this whole thing started. It would mean a lot to me if everyone would go listen to that episode. I'm going to put the link up with the show notes on this episode, so make sure to go check that out.
It's a good episode.
Yeah, many thanks to that podcast for letting me come on and give that a listen. But listen, we have a new iTunes review. I was actually going to talk about this after the recording with Kestrel, but I want to talk about it now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't understand the importance of iTunes reviews and kind of understand the importance of helping a podcast kind of boost their ratings in iTunes, which helps get the podcast exposed to more people.
Exactly. We want to share Salt Lake with more people, and the only way to really do that is to get more exposure.
And that exposure is with iTunes reviews. Let's get Salt Lake City on the map. I'm serious. There's a lot of local podcasts out there right now, and they're kind of jumping the rankings in iTunes. I want to put Salt Lake City on the map. You can go to iamsaltlake.com/iTunes. That will forward you right to iTunes, and you can leave a review there. But we have a recent review from Adam John Daly.
Oh, right on.
He was actually recently on the podcast talking about his podcast. But he wrote, a podcaster is a person in your neighborhood. I absolutely love this podcast. It definitely helps me to get to know the people in my neighborhood. They go in depth with some wonderful people around Salt Lake City and in Utah. I'm a huge fan of the hosts and the guests. 10/10 would recommend.
I totally just envisioned you being Mr. Rogers. You're like the Mr. Rogers of Salt Lake.
Should I button up my sweatshirt while I'm reading that, kind of putting shoes on?
I think we need to go to DI and get some of those sweaters.
Won't you be my neighbor, Salt Lake City? I love you guys. Come and learn. And what was the King?
King Friday.
King Friday.
King Friday.
Today we're talking to King Friday on here, and won't you be
Daniel the Lion?
Hey, I forgot to mention, my mom is actually sitting in the studio right now while we're recording
She's trying to hide from the microphone.
While we're recording this intro. And I tried to get her on the mic, and I was like, we just have to record a quick intro for this episode with Kestrel. Will you say something? No, I won't say anything, which is fine. It's fine. She is
interesting to talk to, so you guys are missing out.
She has some great stories. I want to actually do an interview with her. I think she can share some fascinating stories about my childhood and how crazy I was as a child. Maybe we'll talk her into that in a future episode.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Hey, but this episode is also sponsored by our friends at Oleo Skin and Beard. If you're like us, your skin is dry. If you're like me, your beard is dry. You need to moisturize. Oleo Skin and Beard carries an amazing line of skin oils, beard butters for moisturizing and shaping the beard.
And face and skin products for ladies. They make some great facial products. Their kelp and clay mask, I know I've talked about it before. Amazing. So amazing.
Go check it out. Their website, head on over there, oleoskin.com. You can order directly from the website. You can also find out what shops carry them locally so you can buy them directly from a shop here in Salt Lake City. But anything else you want to mention about Oleo, Chrissy?
Use it. The coffee scrub, obviously. I could just keep telling you all the stuff I love to use, but I think you guys get the point.
Oleoskin.com is their website. But all right, let's jump into that conversation we had with Kestrel Liedtke, owner of the Tin Angel. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Enjoy. Where's home? Where did you grow up? I like to kind of even start there, if you don't mind.
I grew up about a block west of Liberty Park, and my mom still lives in the same house she raised me in. She moved there when I was 3 in 1978, and now I just gave away my age.
It's okay. We don't math. I don't math.
So, I mean, you've lived here pretty much your entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've seen Salt Lake change. You've seen it go through cycles.
Yeah, I have. And it sure has grown up over that time.
Growing up, I mean, have you always been interested in the food industry? Have you always had like kind of your hand somewhere there as far as working?
I got an anthropology degree from the University of Utah, and I worked in restaurants through that. And when you graduate with an anthropology degree, a bachelor's, you really do kind of what you were doing in college to get there. So there's not a lot you can do with it.
So you just continue on in the restaurant industry while you're paying all of your
student loans? Yeah, I'm still working on those. Am
I picking you up over there, Chris?
I don't think not much.
There you go. There you go. So I'm going to kind of jump around just because I'm here to find out your story too, along with the rest of the listeners of the podcast. Tin Angel, obviously you're one of the owners. You're the owner. I mean, how would you describe? Because it's you and your husband. Are you the owners, right?
Yeah, the two of us are the owners. Yeah, we went into it with another partner, but she recently left, and so now it's me and Jerry.
How did that happen? Is that jumping way ahead here, or where?
That with her leaving, or
with Tin Angel,
starting?
Where was the starting point? Where was the idea created?
Well, my husband's been a chef at some of the best places around. He was at Martine for a long time. Lots of other good restaurants. He started Brewvies, which I know is not really known as a culinary destination usually.
But you can eat there.
You can
eat there. People know that.
Yeah.
And somebody mentioned he used to work at the Speedway Cafe years ago.
Which, I mean, what year did that shut down? Maybe 1989, 1990. So that's a very long time ago. And his cousin owned it. And so he worked there as a late teenager, early 20s.
Is that how you guys met? You working in the food industry and him being a chef?
I was working at Bert's Tiki Lounge, if you remember that place.
Oh, that goes back a little. Have you
heard of it.
You've heard of Bert's Tiki Lounge.
Yeah, I worked there for about 3 years when I was 21, 22, 23, and he was a regular. And he worked at Brewvies at the time. And we met doing a student movie where we were just like doing a favor for a guy who was in the film department at the U. And he started hanging out there more, Jerry did. And eventually I was single. And he, as he says, he was waiting around for me.
What a romantic.
Perfect.
Right.
That's awesome. And you ended up both being interested in kind of a similar industry, or at least having knowledge of it and familiarity with it.
Yeah. And so, I worked at a lot of places. I worked at Martine as well, Big Ed's, if you know that place. I worked at Mazza. Over the years, I just worked at a lot of different restaurants, and he too was chefing a lot of places. And then eventually at some point we just said, maybe we should give this a try for ourselves. And here we are.
So how long has Tin Angel been around?
We will be celebrating 10 years next month.
Well, congratulations.
Wow.
10 years. Has it gotten easier or harder?
All of the above. Some things have gotten easier and some things have gotten harder.
Let's jump right into the address of Tin Angel.
Yeah.
In the hours. Talk about that for a little bit. So what's the address of Tin Angel?
It's 365 West, 400 South. And so that puts us, we're on 4th South and we're on the south side of Pioneer Park. We have a cute little patio that faces out to the park. It's nice to have the patio next to the park. It feels very urban. It's definitely an urban park. And in the summer, we've got grapevines growing all over the fence. It's a nice little patio, and it's an interesting neighborhood to be in. In some ways, it was intentional to be in that neighborhood. We wanted to be part of growing that area of downtown and of Salt Lake. And so we invested our time and our effort into that space. We also really saw that there's a lot of food going on in that area. There's, of course, the farmer's market. That's the big one. There's Tony Caputo's and Carlucci's. Rimini Coffee is around the corner. So many food purveyors in the area.
Yeah.
And so we wrote it into our business plan that we would always strive to use people in the neighborhood and local produce.
That's awesome.
What was in that building before you came along?
It's a pizza place.
Okay. So I was just kind of curious there, what was there before Tin Angel?
Yeah. And the longer history is that it's a pioneer era home. And the landlord that we lease from, when we first signed the lease, he told us a story that I've never been able to verify, but here it is. He says that, of course, when Pioneer Park is called Pioneer Park because the teams of horses, as they came into the valley and the waves of pioneers, immigrants coming into the valley, would come with their horses. That was where the stables were, so that they would come in and unhitch their horses, and there'd be stable masters to take care of all those teams of horses. And the man who was the stable master built that house for himself and probably his wives.
That is interesting. Man, I wish we could verify that. That
I know.
would be so fascinating.
I've tried. There's that place at the Rio Grande where you can go and do kind of archival history of buildings, and I've really dug. I haven't been able to find anything.
Have you learned anything really kind of, in your eyes, spectacular from looking through the archives about downtown Salt Lake area?
Oh, let's see. We're definitely in a district that was considered the Greek district at one point.
Oh, yeah. And the Orthodox Church is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pioneer Park itself, of course, has a long history. There used to be a swimming pool there.
Really?
In the park?
In like the 1930s.
Well,
Whoa.
and then they just decided to pull it out.
I guess. And
All
I don't
the homeless people came there.
Well, who knows? Yeah. I don't know how we transitioned from swimming pool to homeless population, but somewhere we did.
Somewhere along the way that happened.
And we'll get into that actually too, because I threw it out there on Facebook with some questions, and there was a few regarding that whole thing going on down there. And we'll get into that here in just a minute. But I want to talk a little bit more about like your menu. Because I'm sure we have a lot of listeners that sadly have never eaten at Tin Angel. And I want to recommend, I mean, seriously, it's good food. How would you describe your menu? How would you describe it to somebody who's never been inside your...
I'd say that we are that kind of category of new American that kind of meets European bistro. Jerry's culinary interest is fairly broad, and so he experiments a lot. And so sometimes we have recipes from Morocco on the menu, or Spain, or Italy, France. Recently, he's been dabbling in some German recipes. So along with what's actually on the printed menu, he gets to play with the specials quite a lot.
So he's kind of changing it up and doing one thing I wanted to talk about for just a second. Sadly, this won't be up before you do this, but I saw a thing on Facebook, eating in the dark.
Yeah.
I think that's so. Have you ever done something like that, Chrissy?
No.
Yeah, I mean, explain that, because I've seen this. It's kind of a popular thing, I guess a lot of restaurants are doing. How do you eat in the dark? Really, truly.
How do you eat in the dark?
Well, I mean, how do you're just sitting in the dark and a waiter comes up to you, and I mean, it's all in the dark?
Like in the dark inside?
Well, ours is a little different. So what we do is a 4-course meal, and only one of those courses is in the dark. It's just served with a blindfold. So the server comes out. We ask you if you have any allergies, and then we have created something really creative. Jerry does all sorts of things. He'll come up with things like, one time he did, what was it? Was smoked salmon and white chocolate and something in there was cinnamony.
Really?
Yeah. So he kind of goes crazy with these. And they're usually like 1 or 2 bites on some kind of a skewer. So the server will come out, bring your blindfold, you put on the blindfolder, and then she has you put your hands out on the table in front of you. And then we put the plate in between your hands, and she kind of guides your hands verbally to where to grab the skewer. And then you've got to sit and chew and eat this totally silent and totally in the dark, and just enjoy and experience what those flavors are. And it often, it's always got a pairing with it, but you don't have to order the alcoholic pairing that goes with it.
So you can't even talk to your date.
Well, people do, but we encourage you.
You slap them. Stop it.
You really, it's almost like sensory deprivation, so that you can really enjoy the food.
Exactly.
That is very interesting.
Because you don't know what you're eating, you really have to sit and contemplate the flavors. And there's a lot of people going like, what is that flavor? I can't quite pinpoint it.
Oh my gosh, we should totally do that.
It's really fun.
I think you're doing it this upcoming Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
We have it this Friday and this Saturday, and then Monday and Tuesday. This is all for Valentine's Day. Like I said, sadly, this is, I wish we could get this, So, I mean, do you do this very often, or is it just around like romantic holidays? We do it 3 times a year. We do it for Halloween, New Year's Eve, and Valentine's Day. So the next one isn't until Halloween.
And you get a pretty good amount of people showing up for it, I guess. People are excited. They probably come out to it.
It's worth making a reservation for, definitely. We definitely fill up.
What made you decide to do that? Just giving it a try, I guess?
Well, I'll tell you, when we first started, I love Halloween. Who doesn't?
Yes.
But we were like, nobody comes out to eat on Halloween. Like, how?
It's not something you think about doing.
No.
Yeah.
So we thought, like, how could we, like, I want to be dressed up and play Halloween music and have a reason to decorate, and I want people to come in. So what could we do that might bring them in? And so we thought of this and gave it a try, and it was fun and successful, and we had a good time was the main thing. And so then we started doing it for other holidays as well.
So it started out kind of being maybe a spooky experience, and that's why it was in the dark?
But then we went, well, this is sexy too.
We're going all 50 Shades of Grey on us.
Yeah, right.
How many people can the restaurant hold? Because it's not big.
It's not. It's
not
teeny.
a huge
It's an
space.
intimate space. So in the restaurant itself, we seat 30, 35 people. And then there's a patio space that it used to just be covered, and we completely enclosed it with big rolling garage doors and heaters. So we can seat out there in the winter, but we can still open up those big garage doors and have it be part of the patio in the summer. And then in the summer, sometimes we have bands out there or, do kind of fun events and things.
Very cool.
That is very cool.
What would you say, like, has there been one or two things that's been the most what's the most rewarding thing with running a restaurant for you, or owning a restaurant?
I have to say, for me, it has been having a reason to be involved in the community and having a way of being like beneficially involved in the community. I'd say that's the most rewarding. I think if Jerry were here, he would talk about being able to play in the kitchen and have the freedom to execute new ideas.
Because it sounds like that's his true passion from
Definitely.
So would you say Jerry's kind of stuck back more in the kitchen a lot when he's there, or does he get to get out and mingle with the
he
customer?
comes out to say hi, but he's mostly in the kitchen.
He's the mad chef scientist.
Uh-huh.
So what's your role in it? What do you do the most?
Mostly I'm administrative and running the front end, making sure things go smooth, picking out wines, things like that, and then making sure the books are caught up.
Oh, the fun stuff.
Right.
Do you ever get back there and cook or anything? Or?
No, that's not my realm.
What about at home?
At home,
does he kind of do the same thing at home? A lot of cooking, or
he's
is it
funny at home because, for one thing, we have picky eaters for kids, and so it's horrible.
How old are they?
They're 9 and 11.
Oh yeah.
And they've always been picky, and it's frustrating for a chef because he'll come up with some wild concoction and the kids just turn their nose up at it. So
really,
like I mean these days it is so it's like my daughter eats a bean burrito every day and my son eats like grilled cheese, really plain foods, and it's kind of surprising.
See, I thought this was just your kids. When I was growing up, you ate what was put in front of you.
I feel that way too. I don't know how I ended up
Me
this
too.
way.
My mom would be like, eat it or go to bed hungry. But it's like, it's a different world now.
It's a different world.
And kids only want bread and cheese.
Well, my kids they're so stubborn. I mean, we did that a few times. Just eat it or go to bed hungry. And they're like, okay, good night. See ya.
Yeah, it's
like,
crazy.
2 days into that, I broke.
What do you think causes that? Is it a generational thing, do you think, with like eating?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think mine are stubborn for one thing.
Yeah, that has to definitely be part of it. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it's hard to even expose them to new foods is what's interesting.
I know.
Especially since you probably are eating it all the time. Like you and Jerry are probably making them for yourselves.
Well, and when they were babies, like they would eat anything. Gorgonzola, just anything, And then it's like around 3 years old that it dawns on them that they have control over what they eat, and they exercise that control.
So they probably don't come into the restaurant very often then.
They do. They just have things they eat. Like my daughter loves the hummus, and my son likes just pasta, and so that's easy to do.
Yeah, saves
Very
money if they just like
easy,
pasta.
I know.
So what do you know now? I mean, you said you were about ready to celebrate your 10-year anniversary of doing this.
Yeah.
What do you know now that you wished you would have known in the beginning? Is there one or two things that maybe pop into your head?
Right off the bat, I know that machinery constantly breaks down.
Ooh, yeah.
And you don't think about that when you first start. You think, oh, great, we bought a walk-in refrigerator. We're good. Those things break down all the time.
Oh, no.
I would also say I wish that I had organized better for the books before we got started to have a better foundation of financial knowledge, because that's where I've really learned a lot. And I went into it with, like I said, anthropology degree, had a lot of restaurant experience, and I've had to learn trial by fire how to do payroll and keep up on the books, because that's really, as a business owner, you just do everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you were kind of forced into having to do all of that.
Yeah.
Which there's really not a lot of training for.
Well, and 10 years ago, probably when you started, a lot of the books, they were on paper. Now everything's computerized.
Well, there were computers 10 years ago.
Well,
it's not the dark ages.
There was, but I think, okay, that made me sound silly. I realize this, but what I'm saying is I think maybe
it's so
10
much
years.
easier and more accessible
now it's
now.
like we have
It's
so many
true.
programs.
Yeah.
And with our smartphones and everything.
Right. Like QuickBooks has an app now. So you can just do stuff on your phone.
That's kind of what I was leaning
Yeah, no, I
towards.
know. I know.
I'm an old timer
She just
myself
got
here.
you, and I enjoyed it. So
So, if somebody was starting, say somebody listening right now, they wanted to start a restaurant or a business or something, hopefully here in Salt Lake, right? We want more business here. What would you recommend them? What would you tell them to do? Kind of what you're saying you've learned, or what?
If I were to give business advice to somebody getting into it, one is do more research than you ever thought you needed to do to make sure that what you're doing is actually a solid idea. That's one thing, maybe as from being a lifelong resident in one city, is that you watch some of these business ideas just turn and burn, things that don't even last a year, and you just cry for them. They invested not only their heart and soul, but, major amounts of their bank account and debt into these places. And I'm not just talking restaurants, it's just businesses in general. I think sometimes people get an idea for a business and they get some passion behind it without quite doing the research.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, you see a lot of restaurants come and go too.
Yeah.
What do you think has made you guys so successful, to be able to continue to grow and keep going?
I don't know. I would say probably mostly Jerry's culinary skill. I think that's the main thing. Because nobody ever leaves there going like the food was bad. They might be like, boy, that place is kind of funky and weird, and I don't know about the neighborhood, but they never leave saying that the food was a bad experience.
You've never had to kick anybody out of there. You've never had to someone just come in there and start talking shit on your food, right?
Yeah.
No, you hear about that
true.
at restaurants, right? And they're just
crazy.
they're just like, oh, this stuff is horrible. Blah 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 blah. I'm going to report you on Yelp and all this stuff. You
And
never
just to get a free meal.
You've never run into that.
No,
That's awesome.
We haven't.
Do you pay attention to Yelp reviews and all of that?
Yeah, I look at them sometimes.
I didn't even look before I brought you on. I'm assuming you have good Yelp reviews.
We do. People have been really kind to us, and I, in some ways, just want to say thank you to anybody listening out there who's made a nice review, because it's predominantly great reviews.
And I've heard a lot of people talk about how great the food is, just in random conversation too. So it's very well known that you guys have wonderful food.
Yay.
I hope to make it there soon.
Yeah, Chrissy's actually
I've never been there.
Embarrassingly,
It's
has
very
never been
embarrassing.
there. I wanted to take her before I brought you on the show, but it just didn't happen.
Well,
So.
we'll take you when we can get you.
Hey, we gotta go one of those eat in the dark nights. I'm totally interested in that.
Yeah.
If you were to open up a new restaurant, would you change anything about the food or just kind of keep doing it? Because it sounds like you're kind of constantly coming up with new ideas and whatnot.
I think, you asked earlier what I've learned. One thing I've solidly learned is that the only thing that I have to offer is just who I am and what we have. And I don't know how to do something else, really. I wouldn't know how to run a burger place because I would feel... lots of reasons why.
Sure.
But this is an extension of who we are and what we love. And I don't know that I'd want to invest my time and energy and money into doing anything else.
You've been authentic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, this is us. You take it or leave it, and people love it.
And in the beginning, that was very hard for me to put ourselves out there so much because we are it's almost like an extension of ourselves, like an art form.
Yeah.
And so at first, when you're first doing something artistic, you put your soul into it and you have no idea how it's going to be received. And so we were nervous about it at first.
Sure.
But over time, I got more confident that, I don't have a choice. I only can be who I am. We can't really fake it and do anything else.
Sure.
And B, it seems to be going okay. So I guess we'll just keep doing this.
I meant to ask this at the beginning. Any meaning behind the name Tin Angel?
Oh, it's a great story. So my husband's father had a bar here in Salt Lake I think he opened in 1962 and closed in 1968. So this is a long time ago. And the bar was on about 4th South and State, maybe about where Circle Lounge is.
Okay.
Kind of by the Jackalope. And he was kind of slow. And there was this department store down the street called Auerbach's. A lot of old timers remember Auerbach's. And this guy came in from Auerbach's, a guy that worked there, and said, hey, I want to do a little show here on Friday nights if you'd let me. And Jerry's dad, who is Jerry Sr., said, yeah, whatever, it's kind of slow. See you Friday night. And so the guy shows up on Friday night in full drag and with other drag queens and a large following. And so it was like the busiest night he'd ever had. It was 1962 drag queens. Like, if you can imagine, the big beehive piled up hair, bouffants, and just earrings dripping from their ears and the cute little tight dresses,
Sure.
Mad Men style. And so it was the busiest night he'd ever had. So he kept going. And he was known as a drag bar in Salt Lake City in the 1960s.
Wow.
I had no idea that culture in Salt Lake, because it's a pretty good, solid culture here right now.
Yeah.
That it was that long ago started.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go Salt Lake.
I know.
Yeah.
Let's actually take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. And then I have a bunch of questions.
Rapid fire.
I threw it out. Well, yeah, rapid fire. I threw it out on Facebook. I said, hey, I'm going to be chatting with the owners of Tin Angel. If you have any questions, some interesting questions. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you those. So
Great.
Hang tight. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Jed's Barbershop. With 3 locations now, you have no reason to not always look your best. Go get a haircut, a beard trim, or even a straight razor shave. Jed's Barbershop is open 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday 9 to 7, and Sunday 12 to 5. They have a location downtown at 212 South, 700 East, and in Sugar House at 2153 East, 2100 South. They just opened up a 3rd location at 167 East, 900 South, right next to Randy's Records. No appointment is necessary. Head on over to jedsbarbershop.com for more information. So like I said on Facebook, I threw it out there that I'd be chatting with you. And we got a few comments here. One person said you have the dopest dinnerware, so I wanted to kind of point that out
That's
to you.
more of a compliment.
That was a compliment.
That's I go shopping at estate sales and the DI, and all of our plates and forks and knives are all like vintage old stuff. Sometimes it has a little chip. You have to be a little forgiving with our vintage dinnerware.
That is really,
but it adds character, right?
Oh, it totally
and
does.
unique instead of going into some of these places, no style, no character.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't remember it. But when you come to Tin Angel, that was one thing with when I've been there, it's like you remember it.
Good.
You leave remembering it. So there was one question. I don't know if you saw any of these by chance.
I did. I looked, but it was yesterday, so I don't know.
Yeah,
what's been asked.
so Jason, Monique, and Jeff, they all kind of were very similar, talking about the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Where you're at. One of them says, ask about the neighborhood. I'm interested in their perspective. How can we really make it better? Monique says, ask them how the homeless population across the street affects their business. And then Jeff says, that I'd like to know their thoughts on the city's actions around Pioneer Park. So I know that was kind of 3 questions, but they're all very similar in my opinion. How, because I used to, do you know the LaFrance apartments? They're kind of over by I used to live on the other side. So I've been down there in Pioneer Park, and it's gotten very oversaturated with homeless people.
It has.
Which it's not anything negative or it is what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And with your business where it's located, how has that affected it? Because I'm sure over 10 years you've seen.
Yeah. Well, one thing is that we very rarely ever have any negative experiences with the people, the community living in the park and in the streets there. Once in a great while, somebody comes onto the patio and maybe wants to spare change the customers, and we just ask them to move along, or somebody wants to use the restroom. But these are really rare occurrences, and I don't know if that's because we're set back from the street with a big fence in front of us, that it just seems a little less approachable. I don't know. But overall, we just haven't had that many negative experiences. Now, we've seen a lot of, the idea that people are living in the street because they have no other options, and particularly mentally ill people, it's not a positive thing.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, a failing of our society that we allow this to happen. And I think some very pointed and thoughtful care needs to be taken to have this not be the way that we expect people to live if they're mentally ill or struggling with drug addiction or just had a medical bill they couldn't pay and lost their apartment. That being said, that's maybe one of the things I find fulfilling about being in that neighborhood is that we can participate in fundraisers and give donations to, the road home when they're doing a silent auction or something like that. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever find has it deterred people from coming to your establishment at all? Or I guess you really wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. I suspect the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because the truth is that things have, I hate to say this, but things have gotten worse there in the last few years. And we've seen a downturn in business in the last few years that seems to parallel it.
So, what do you do as a business? Or is there anything you can do?
There's nothing I can do. I'm far more concerned that this is the status quo to have people living in the streets than I am about my little business and whether we're making money.
Well, it's been, in just a year even. It seems like in such a short time, it's just constantly getting worse and worse.
It is. There are some definite things that have contributed to that. One is, I don't know if you saw those articles that, I think the first one was in New York Times about how Utah has solved its homelessness problem, providing little houses to people. These were national articles that were very out of serious publications, and it was based on some real stuff that did happen here between about 3 and 5 years ago. But we didn't solve our homelessness problem, but it caused homeless people in other cities to just hop on buses and head to Utah. So the vast majority of the people living on the streets in Salt Lake City are not Salt Lake City natives.
Yeah,
I just don't know why anybody would want to be homeless here. Like in the winter, it's freezing.
It is.
Let's go to California or Florida or something.
The other thing that I think has contributed to it in the last few years is that Valley Mental Health lost all that funding about 3 years ago. And they predicted at the time, they said, 2 to 3 years from now, you're going to have a homelessness crisis because they lost
they
funding.
Can't get the help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard that the police department in Salt Lake is actually trying to do that, where they're trying to go out and help people get some mental help or rehab or,
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that gets a little bit better.
Didn't the police just even go into Pioneer Park and start arresting everybody?
They did these couple of sweeps where they were like, you have the choice to either go to jail or a rehab bed to addicts, and then trying to pick up the dealers. And before they did that, they made sure there'd be room in the jail. There was negative stuff and positive stuff. I always kind of watch what the ACLU has to say about these things. And in the end, I think the ACLU was a little trepidatious about how that was going to go down. But in the end, they were in support of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I actually thought it sounded like a really good idea.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, and with them bringing it up, I mean, it's like, hey, this is a question a lot of people have, your location, where you're at. Now, what about?
I love that part of town too, though. Yeah. It's so there's so much history and the architecture is beautiful. It's such a great part of town. I think people need to go out and visit it regardless and go visit the shops there and really, spend your money around there.
Well, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, when we were living right around the corner, it was just constantly it was just getting more and more oversaturated. Mm-hmm. And it's like, gosh, something's got to do something. But what it is, I don't know either.
Yeah. And there's some new directions coming. One of your questions there was, how do we feel about the new homeless resource centers that are going to be popping up? I think that plan of making them resource centers is a really good step in the right direction, because you're not just talking about beds that close at 8 a.m. and then you're on your own. You're talking about a center, hopefully. I mean, if they follow the plan that they've kind of set forward, these are resource centers where you might be able to wash a load of laundry, get a shower, get some job training, use a computer to find a job, to find an apartment, to find daycare. Maybe even the family, when they're talking, might even have daycare on site.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things. I mean, if you imagine yourself in a bad situation where you've landed on the streets, list the first 10 things you think you would need to get yourself off the streets. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, nice pair of clothes for an interview, maybe a haircut, and probably in my case, a beard trim,
Right.
I mean, you got to get those things.
Sure.
I mean,
a bus pass. I mean, it's a huge thing to some people. A lot of the jobs that someone who is living on the streets could get, a lot of those jobs are very far away in the west end of the valley.
Yeah.
And
they need the transportation to be able to even get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, another question, Michelle, she's a big listener of the podcast. She wants to know about your gluten-free options. Oh. She's gluten-free. I don't know if you have any special gluten-free. I mean, or if gluten-free is really not that difficult.
It's not that difficult. So one thing is that our kitchen is super knowledgeable about every single thing that's in every single recipe. And so where maybe like our steak that goes on the steak salad used to be marinated, we used to put soy sauce on that. But we got wise and we use tamari now. And so they're very careful about knowing where gluten is hiding and then knowing where we've put it. So, if they are going to use soy sauce instead of tamari, which I don't know why they ever would, but just for example, they would know exactly where they had used that so that we're not ever going to cause a reaction. We get some really, really, really strong allergies. People trust us to be able to take care of their allergies. And so we've never caused a reaction that we know of. And we've always been able to take care of people, whether it's gluten intolerance or all sorts of others.
I mean, and it's nice to know that. I mean, you go into a lot of places and you ask them a question and they look at you like, what?
Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's nice to know somebody in based off of even your answer. It's like, okay, now I can.
It's like
Yeah.
we could go to Tin Angel. We'll find something we can both eat.
Now, what
Yeah.
about like vegetarian or vegan or anything like that? There's options there for that.
Vegetarian and vegan is just cooking good food without animals in it. I mean,
Sure.
it can be done.
Well, I was vegan, gosh, close to 20 years ago now, and I mean that it was so tough to
Yeah.
find a good meal,
Yeah,
unless
and-
you just got like a side of fries
Yeah.
or something.
Things have changed, and we definitely have great options on our menu for
Sure.
vegans and vegetarians.
I always like to kind of find out when we bring people on the show a little bit more about you personally, kind of get to know, what makes your brain tick, who you are. What are some of your other hobbies and interests when you're not working at Tin Angel? What do you enjoy doing?
I like to snowshoe. I used to like to ski, but I haven't actually skied in 3 years now. And this year would have been the year to do it, but
I heard this year was incredible. I'm not a
yeah, me
skier
too.
either, but
It was a record snowfall this year,
yeah.
right?
And I mean, everybody's just all the pictures on Facebook. I'm so jealous.
Oh, and you were just too busy.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are still kind of young, and
Yeah.
we've got a restaurant. I mean, it takes up our time.
yeah, well, and that's always a tough question to ask people. I bring them on and they're like, "What are you talking about? I'm so busy with the project I'm
Yeah, I know.
doing. I don't have time for other interests."
But it's important to cultivate those other interests and have a life.
It is.
There
to
are
do that
days-
for yourself, to keep yourself even just sane a little bit.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very important.
It is.
Do you have a memorable concert or sporting event that you've been to?
Well, I'm not a sports person. I will tell you if you're really asking questions about. So, I was raised in Salt Lake by Deadheads, and I had seen, close to 80 Dead shows by the time I was 13 years old.
Okay, see, and this is what I like to dissect who we bring on here. I would have never guessed this.
Yeah.
But that is incredible. Like, did you travel around?
Oh, yeah. And it was, as a kid, it was like my main gripe. We never go to Disneyland. We never have any family vacations except going to see the Dead again.
were you a single child?
No, me and my little sister.
Oh, wow.
So they would drag you and your little sister. I mean, all 50 states, the western states?
Mostly Western states.
That is
Like
so
West
cool.
Coast tour every summer.
And were you making grilled cheeses in the parking lot?
We were
And
eating them.
You were eating them, but making tie-dyes, nothing. You were just going.
We had a family friend who sold tie-dye, and so we were often involved in that little enterprise.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
I know.
And did you have
Funny.
like a motorhome or RV or something?
Oh, God. Sometimes it was on the back of my dad's motorcycle.
Really?
I'm serious.
Okay, I'm loving the
This is
direction of
awesome.
this conversation because I find that so fast. I've always wanted to see the Dead. I've never seen them.
Yeah.
I remember, gosh, what was it? Back in the '90s, they played. It was the Delta Center at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of the last shows that Jerry was.
Yeah.
Maybe you were even there.
I was, yeah.
and I was so bummed out that I know my brother went there. But I didn't get to go.
And, it's not really my kind of music anymore, but that is the childhood I was raised in. I was born at home, and
See, look at this natural childbirth.
That is.
I was born at home as well,
Were
so
you?
that's
I am such a misfit right now.
well, and I chose to have my babies at home too.
You did?
I did.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was just kind of I learned from watching my mom, I guess.
Sure, sure. Was there like a Grateful Dead show that stuck out more than others?
Have you ever seen a show of any sort at Red Rocks in
I have, yeah.
Yeah, that is a beautiful place to see a show. And we saw many as a kid. And I remember one in a heavy rainstorm that was just beautiful.
How was it back? I mean, in the 80s, that culture in Salt Lake, was it as welcomed?
Oh, I think we were living kind of underground. But, there was the Open Classroom is a local elementary school that I went to. And that was definitely a haven of parents like my parents and
Sure.
kids like me. So it's not like we were all that underground. But, that's one of the things I think that makes this city so interesting is that we've got this dominant religion, and then it kind of drives people that are outside of that to kind of unify
Sure.
and find common interests and time together.
It's true, and it really they can prop each other up and kind of support each other.
Yeah.
Which is super nice.
And I would have never guessed the whole that
oh my
thing.
gosh, me neither. I'm just reeling. This is the coolest story. You need to make a movie out of your life.
If you could learn one random skill, is there something you would like to learn? Or you're like in the back of your head, you're like, gosh, I really wish I could play this instrument or walk on stilts.
I've always wished I were more musical.
Do you play any instruments now?
I don't. And I've always thought that sometime there would be this time in my life where I'd have
You just be
time set
inspired.
aside for it. Yeah.
What would you like to learn? What would you?
I would start small. I might even just start on a ukulele.
I don't know if that's really. Well, it's a small instrument.
It is
I guess.
small.
I wouldn't mean
physically.
to be so literal.
Yeah, okay.
Seems to me string instruments are the hardest to learn on, but maybe because they're hard for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be. Oh, you'd be so cute with a ukulele. By the way, just throwing it out there.
Thanks.
If money was no object, how would you spend your day?
Boy, I would pay off all my bills.
Yeah.
And then I would not worry about bills. How about that?
That sounds like a good day.
You would just spend the day laying under a tree, not worrying about bills.
Yeah.
Isn't that sad? Kind of how we, as adults, we've kind of that's like our main
That's
concern
life now.
is just worrying about bills.
What do you think is worse, worrying about bills or worrying about like if the crops are going to grow on the farm?
Right.
You know, as opposed to 100 years ago, who has it? Who has it harder?
Yeah, that's it.
Or I
It's a
think
good
there's
point,
still
actually.
people that are worrying about their crops and their bills.
Yeah,
That's
but
probably true.
100 years ago, you'd be worrying about like whether diphtheria is coming, or
That's true. If you're going to die of whatever.
or like the locusts.
so true.
Do you have a go-to karaoke song? Are you a karaoke person?
No, I don't sing.
Yeah,
No.
that's
Oh, not
fair.
even for fun?
I sing by myself all the time.
That's what karaoke's for.
Yeah, no, there's people there. I'm not going to subject them to that.
If you could do anything for your next birthday, what would you do?
Well, I'll tell you, I just turned 40, and I thought, I think most people think this, oh, I'm going to have the big bash. Maybe we'll like go to Mexico, whatever. You know what I did? I hiked to a yurt in the mountains with my husband and hid out to turn 40.
It's so awesome.
Backpacked up.
Was it hard to turn 40?
It wasn't that hard. In fact, I think I went and hid because I was like, okay, it's a coming, bear down.
Maybe if you can outrace it.
Well,
they can get
the
you.
reason I ask, I'm turning 40 the end of the year, and I don't know. It's like as much as I'm dreading it, I'm kind of excited. It's like a new chapter, right?
What are you going to do?
What I haven't really thought. I would like to go to Mexico now. Now that you say that, I mean, can we go to Mexico, Chris?
I think Mexico sounds excellent.
I don't know. Maybe I'd like to do a cruise or something. I think I've never done the cruise thing, and I've heard cruises are awesome.
Like a real
That's my
big
idea
kid
of hell.
vacation. That's your idea of hell?
A cruise,
Just-
absolutely.
is it-
Being
is it the
trapped on a
people,
boat with
or-
the the food that they would serve, and
I've heard the food is amazing, though.
Don't you always hear about like rotavirus? And
Ew,
people
really?
get sick?
Oh,
I'm sorry. I mean,
this is
You read other books than I do, I guess. I'm just like, oh, free food. Yes. Well, I'm going to gain 10 pounds on this trip.
I'd just be in the casino. Clunk, clunk.
there you go.
I always like to kind of jump into Salt Lake City a little bit. I mean, obviously, with this being a Salt Lake City podcast, if somebody was visiting Salt Lake City for a day, what would you tell them to do or check out?
You know what I always tell people to go see is Gilgal Gardens. Mm-hmm. I think it's so interesting.
Isn't it
and
just such a unique, tucked away place?
Yeah, and it just gives you this little picture of what like Mormon culture used to be like. The guy in the plaid pants and all of that weirdness.
It's such an interesting place. I think you could analyze it for hours.
I know.
And still not know what's going on.
Yeah.
What is it? Do you know the address off the top of your head for listeners?
What? Like
It's like
just just east of 7th East, and that's 5th South, and it's on the north side of the street. So it's like kitty corner from Whole Foods, but then just a little east.
And I'll put the address. Maybe I'll put the address at iamsaltlake.com, just because I've had listeners say, you recommend these places, but then I don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so, because it is kind of tucked away.
You
There's
would never guess.
ex-wife's
Like,
place,
driving past
the
it?
bar. Any other things you would tell people to check out or do while they were visiting?
Oh, Mill Creek Canyon, I think, is always a great place to really understand how close we are to the mountains. Is like it people are flabbergasted, and Mill Creek Canyon is that one that you can just be in the wilderness driving from the freeway in just moments. and it seems to amaze people.
What would you change about Salt Lake if you could change
Politics?
What, like, just
it would be, I guess it would be take Salt Lake out of Utah. It's our state legislators and our governor. I think they're right now especially exercising some real lack of intelligence.
Sure.
And caution.
Let's see. I always ask like favorite local eating spots. I mean, obviously people got to come to Tin Angel, but I'm sure you enjoy other places in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
What are any other recommendations food wise?
Oh, let's see. I love sushi at Takashi, but who doesn't, right? I love Indian food, so we're always trying to find the great Indian food and Thai food as well.
What is that, Himalayan Kitchen?
Yeah, that's
isn't
good,
isn't
isn't
that
it?
delicious? Yeah.
I love that spot. Honestly, we don't eat out as much as you might think that we would, but
Well, there's nothing. Yeah.
yeah,
We probably have
busy.
like better tasting food at home.
Do you
with
ever
your
get
own
Do you ever get
skills.
sick of the food at Tin Angel? Because you eat it all the time. You're like, I can't do that anymore. I'm done.
I don't know. It's funny. Usually when you work in a restaurant, you do get, it's almost like it's like the taste of the grill itself or something. It's like there's one permeating flavor in everything. I don't think that's, and I know that sounds like I'm just bullshitting you, but
Sure.
It's been 10 years and I still
don't-
like our food.
Is there a favorite thing that you enjoy at Tin Angel?
Yes, and I don't always eat it. The gnocchi with gorgonzola cream sauce, and I get it with the short ribs on it, and it's amazing. But it's also pretty rich.
And do you have a full liquor license there too?
Yeah, we've got craft cocktails.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Have you always had that? Has that been a struggle? I know with the Utah liquor laws.
It was hard to get in the beginning. That our first, they do these meetings every month, and you either get approved or not. And then if you don't get approved, you have to come back in a month. And our first stab at it, they said, "Oh, we don't want any liquor sales by Pioneer Park," and we were like, "Are you kidding?
Really?
Like, there's people drinking all over the park. Like, yeah, you don't want a fine dining restaurant to be drinking."
Oh man.
So we got it on our second stab, but they were out of. There's different kinds of licenses, and we were actually only going for the beer and wine license. We thought, well, wine is all we need. And they were out of those, and so they forced us into the full liquor license. And now we're glad, it's better that way. I'd
Did
rather
you have
be
to
able
build
to
a Zion's curtain?
We didn't.
Really?
2007 is when we got our liquor license. 2009 is when that went in. So we're currently grandfathered in.
Oh, that's so nice.
We can still just shake cocktails in front of kids. I mean, I know that seems shocking.
Ooh, so risque.
I know.
So basically, if you want your kids to be able to see how a cocktail is shaped,
Come on down.
come on.
That's fantastic.
It's a selling point,
Right?
So
It really is. Honestly, I mean, it's an experience to see a cocktail made.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with letting kids see it. It's fun.
Did you hear that thing that Jim DeBacchus did some research about where the idea for the Zion Curtain came from for the legislators at the time?
I didn't know.
So, because it's been around twice, it was around in the 90s and then it got taken down and then it went back up. So that original one, he says it came out, the bill for that came out the same year as that Tom Cruise movie Cocktail. And so that Tom Cruise movie Cocktail, he's flipping. I mean, they had a body double for him, for this guy who could juggle and do all these crazy tricks with cocktails. So the state legislators who didn't drink were afraid that was going on everywhere and the children would see it. Like we all have these mad cocktail flipping skills.
Then everyone's going to want to drink because they're making it cool again.
Yes, right. We're all
my
Tom Cruise.
goodness.
So that's, Lamb's Grill, I heard, just had to spend $10,000 on theirs on that beautiful 100-year-old bar, which is absolutely tragic.
That is awful.
And all of that because Tom Cruise was good in a movie.
Do you ever do you get nervous as a business owner that serves liquor? Like maybe you make one small mistake?
Yes.
Is there a lot of stress there, I could imagine?
Yeah, because people lose their liquor licenses all the time. Fortunately, we just came through a round of, we did what they call catching a cub. It means that the DABC sent in someone that was underage who tried to buy a drink and one of our servers carded them. And so then they come back in and, give us a little certificate. So we just recently caught a cub. I think we just had a sting recently too. They don't really tell you about that, where they tried to order a double. And we have always passed this stuff with flying colors because I'm so scared of losing our liquor license, because we'd be nothing without it. You can't do fine dining with no booze.
Do you get people like, oh, make me a double, I'll slip you an extra 50?
Oh, yeah. People try it, but there's no way.
Not worth the risk.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I mean,
by far not worth the risk.
I don't know why anybody would do that, though. I mean, it's sad that we can't have a double here in Salt Lake City or Utah.
Yeah.
But, the liquor laws, in my opinion,
they're a little silly.
They're silly, but at least we can still get booze.
Yeah, we
here,
get
right?
around it.
I mean, we get around it.
I think the Zion Curtain is the silliest one. The other one I hate is that you can't have booze with brunch until 11:30. I think they should make it. Oh, yeah. The liquor store is open before that, so you can go buy a bottle of vodka, but you can't have a Bloody Mary in a restaurant.
It's so interesting. And there's really no rhyme or reason. It's just whoever was in
random.
a mood that day.
And I don't even think it's a control thing either. I just think it's just silliness, really,
It's probably ignorance.
Yeah.
I mean, if I may be so bold.
I think it is.
So.
I mean, these are non-drinkers making laws about drinking.
Yeah, exactly. And they have no experience. They don't have any understanding of what it's really like, or
Like if I tried to make laws about podcasting, and you guys would be like, "What the hell?
What are you doing to us?
You can't use that kind of microphone. That's my favorite kind of microphone."
Let's run down the list again. The address of Tin Angel so people can stop by.
365 West, 400 South. So on the south side of Pioneer Park.
And you're open every day.
We are closed Sundays, and we're open for lunch and dinner Monday through Saturday, and we do a nice, fun brunch on Saturdays.
Well, we'll have to go down there for brunch.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're on, you have a website, social media?
It's thetinangel.com, and we're on Facebook as well as Instagram and Twitter, but, when you find one, you find it all.
Do you find social media helps your business, or is it just kind of one of those
It's really hard
things?
to tell, but it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey.
I like taking pictures of the food and putting them up and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything else, or what were you
I
going
was
to
just
say?
to say, do you get a lot of people try to reach out to you through social media?
Oh, yeah, I think so, and that's how...
that's how we connected.
That's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, either one of you, Chrissy, or that you would like to add, Kestrel? Or
No.
Do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the listeners?
Stay true to yourself. And I know it's such a cliche, but I think I'm not saying follow your bliss and it'll pay off, because it doesn't all the time. Like I said earlier about do research.
Real talk.
But, staying true to who you are and what you have to offer to the world is the only way, I think, to actually be able to offer that to the world. You have to stick to it. And sometimes it can be nerve-wracking, and you can feel shy, but you got to just stick to it.
I love it. I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much. I've had a great chat.
Yeah.
And I can't recommend Tin Angel enough to all the listeners of the podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Many thanks to Kestrel Liedtke from the Tin Angel Cafe for coming on this episode, sharing their story. What a great story. What a great restaurant. Head on over to imsaltlake.com/265. It's for episode 265. All the links to connect with her and Tin Angel are right there. We'll put the address up there as well. Go check it out. Grab some of their food. Oh my gosh, it is delicious. One thing I wanted to point out during the interview, I don't think it was mentioned that the Tin Angel was actually named after the drag bar.
Jerry's dad's drag bar.
Drag bar back in the 60s.
Because we ended up talking about that during the break.
We kind of veered off subject or the topic, and Kestrel mentioned after the interview, she's like, I don't think it was kind of correlated that that Tin Angel Cafe was mentioned during that. So I thought that was kind of cool.
It is really cool, actually. It's an amazing story.
Find out the history of Salt Lake City and whatnot. But this episode of the podcast is sponsored by Jed's Barbershop. With 3 locations now, you have no reason to not always look your best. Go get a haircut, a beard trim, or even a straight razor shave. Jed's Barbershop is open 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday 9 to 7, and Sunday 12 to 5. Their brand new location, like we mentioned, is just barely opened up. 167 East, 900 South. It's going to be right next to Randy's Records. They also have a location right downtown at 212 South, 700 East, and in Sugar House at 2153 East, 2100 South. No appointments necessary. Just show up, get a haircut. Maybe you got a hot date for the weekend, a business interview. You want to look your best. So head on over to Jed's Barbershop. jed's.com for more information. But speaking of Jed's, Chrissy, I want to mention they have some art shows coming up.
Yeah.
That I want to talk about. Put these on your calendar. Go check them out. Go check out some of the local artists that we have here in Salt Lake City. So on March 12th, artist Abby Pittman, there's going to be a musician, Branson Anderson is going to be there. Starts at 7 o'clock. These all go on from about 7 to 9. And then Sunday, April 9th, artist Samantha Moore and musician Brother Man is going to be there. And I'm hoping you and I can be there.
Yeah.
I want to do some Facebook Live there.
Yeah, that would be
Maybe
amazing.
do some recording. I don't know.
And these are kind of like the launch of the artist's art there that will actually stay there for the month, right?
I believe so.
So you can go visit it. If you like something, if you see it and you want to go back, it's still going to be there for a month.
Yeah, they put it up on the walls. It's
really
kind of cool how they, the barbershop just kind of spreads the chairs. They kind of push the chairs back up.
Yeah.
They have the musician come in.
It's amazing how they double as a venue and make such a cool experience.
Like Jed said when he was on the podcast, he loves Salt Lake City. He loves the local market here, and he loves supporting all things local. Again, both those events are going to be happening at their downtown location, 212 South, 700 East. So this past week, Chrissy, I remember I sent you a picture. This is a really cool story. I wanted to share it on this podcast episode. But as you know, one of my favorite musicians, probably my favorite all-time musician, Ryan Adams. If anybody knows me, knows that I love him and his music. He was wearing a Heavy Metal Shop T-shirt on this puzzle that he released with his new album that just came out last Friday.
Yeah.
And Kevin Kirk, friend of the podcast, owner of the Heavy Metal Shop, he was on episode 66. He posted this, and he just thought it was the raddest thing in the world.
Which it is.
And I just, oh my gosh, Ryan Adams is wearing a Heavy Metal Shop shirt.
Yeah, and you texted me immediately.
I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It really puts Salt Lake City on the map.
It's so cool.
When a musician wears one of his shirts here from town.
Yeah, and we've talked about how the Heavy Metal Shop is so iconic for Salt Lake.
A lot of people don't even realize it. It's kind of like if a Californian was to wear an In-N-Out shirt, right? Like it's like, oh, well, I'm in California. I have to go get an In-N-Out shirt. Well, if you come to Salt Lake City,
you need a Heavy Metal Shop shirt.
So I just thought that was really cool.
That is so cool.
I wanted to share that on this podcast. If you didn't get a chance to go check it out, if you don't follow either one of us.
So support local, go buy Ryan Adams' album with the Heavy Metal Shop shirt. It's indirectly supporting local, right?
Or just go get a Heavy Metal Shop shirt, and
That's
then you
actually
can
a
look
better idea.
awesome in all of the photos that you take.
I love that logo. I think it's so fun.
That's going to do it for this episode. Just a reminder, leave us an iTunes review.
Please.
Help boost our ratings. It takes you just a second. Mm-hmm. IamSaltLake.com/iTunes.
Don't make me come to your house and show you how to do it. I will.
It
I will.
literally just takes you guys a minute to do that, to go leave a review.
You can do it while you're listening to an episode.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast, of course. We'd love to connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. IamSaltLake.com is our website. But with that being said, you guys get out, have a great week, love the city you live in, support local.
And good night, Grammy.